ever leave this world alive, I'll come back down and sit beside your feet tonight. Wherever I am, you'll always be more than just a memory. Well, if I ever leave this world alive.
Hey folks, Professor Finn here, and today I'm showing off my new headshot while I bring up this new topic for you folks regarding student success in the classroom. Now, um, I was part of the town hall meeting held on Zoom with the American Board of Funeral Service Education's educators yesterday, and part of that discussion I said, hey, I'm going to throw out a video and some tools for everyone to kind of address some student success issues and tracking and get some authentic feedback from what's going on in your remote and distance education classrooms. So, where did this stuff come from? First thing is education is kind of my second or third career, if you will. And when I came into education, I did not have a lot of experience as an educator. I had a student librarian job for the choral department at the St. Petersburg College in my undergrad. I was a graduate assistant for the University of South Florida in their opera program for my master's degree. And then after I finished mortuary school, I got a little part-time job doing tutoring based off of some grant that St. Petersburg College got for their funeral service education program. So when I came into academia, I did not have a large skill set. And one of the most important things that I took as part of a professional development tool for myself was the Effective Teaching Practices course through the Association of College and University Educators, which is where I learned about a lot of the tools that I am now using in my classroom to make my teaching more effective, as well as assessing the effectiveness of my program. I also took another course through Quality Matters, which is specifically for teaching online and virtual learning and things like that. So what I will say, having been through both programs, is it doesn't matter which one you kind of take if you have the opportunity to take it, but take one of them. I found that the AQ course was much more effective for me because it was the first one I took and it gave me a lot of tools. When I finally took Quality Matters about a year and a half later, so much of it was based on what I had learned in AQ, then directly ported for virtual learning. So AQ is meant to be more of a face-to-face traditional environment, but everything that you are presented with certainly can be brought over to virtual learning. So moral of the story is if you have the opportunity to take either of these courses, by all means, please do. And I am an ardent supporter and promoter of the Effective Teaching Practices course offered through AQ. I recommend it to every one of my peer educators, whether you are new to it or whether you've been there a while, you will take something out of it. And then as your time permits or whatever, take the other one so that you get a really well-rounded idea of what's going on out there. So what are the prerequisites that you should have going into what we're going to talk about today? Well, one of the things I recommend is some type of desktop scanner. Now, when I worked at the funeral home I worked at, we went to kind of a paperless storage environment, and everyone had these little Canon DR2010Cs. Now, back in the day, these things were like $500-600. They were expensive, but you can pick them up on surplus sites and online auction sites fairly cheap, $100 or even cheaper in many cases, in fine working condition. You will have issues with drivers and some of the modern operating systems. I know that I cannot get this to work with my Mac anymore. They did have a Mac specific one. The driver no longer works. It's the black one down there. I think you see it's just a different color, but everything else is identical. It no longer works with Mac OS X 10.15, but I do have it working with Windows 10 on my Microsoft Surface. So at work, the drivers have been there forever. It's not an issue. We use Windows. At home, I can't use it on my Mac. But you really want something like this or something comparable where you can just put the stuff in and scan it as quickly as possible. Because with the documentation you're going to get from your student, you're going to want to scan it and give it back as soon as possible. If you have a all-in-one printer that has a automatic scan bed, then you're good as well. Again, anything that just makes this quick and easy for you, and it really does need to scan double side, because you're going to see how I do this sort of thing. Really, really important that it scans both sides. You don't have to go flipping or anything silly like that. So the first big thing that we're going to bring up won't really involve the scanner, but it is going to involve you creating assignment in your course. So let's talk about what that course is, or what that assignment is. So this is an assignments course that I use in my online classes. And what the assignment is the student is to collect all of their handwritten or typed notes, scan them if they are physical, and then upload them to a Dropbox or an assignment box in your learning management system. Can you use email? Certainly. But the problem with emails and scanning is that generally scans and pictures of scans will really eat up your inbox space if you are limited by your institution, and it will also trigger your institution's spam blockers and all sorts of other things. So I strongly, strongly discourage you from using something like email for this type of an assignment. If you want to use OneDrive or a Dropbox, again, make sure you're following your institution's policies regarding shared drives and things like that, so that students are uploading sensitive documents. It's going to have student identifiers on it. So you want to make sure that this information is protected. So follow your institution guidelines, which is why I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to use your learning management system Dropboxes for this. That way you're complying with institutional guidelines regarding student work product, as well as your jurisdiction's retention of students' documentation in class. So how can they do this? Well, several ways to scan. You saw the aforementioned really cool scanner. If you've got small class sizes and you want to do it for them, you can do it. But that can be time consuming. And I know professors have 3 places to be at once. So I recommend for students, use a scanner at home or work. Great. Most of your workplaces will have some type of high-speed scanning device. Knock yourself out. Make sure you take the staples out so you don't scratch up anything. Even better is using your smart devices or tablet devices with cameras to take pictures and uploading the JPEGs. Personally, I use Cam Scanner on my Android phone. I believe I also have it on my iPad. There are numerous products that will take it and convert it into a PDF so that you can upload it. It doesn't really matter which application they're using, as long as they're using something to get the assignment done. Contact your Learning Resources Center or your library, and they may have tools by which students can use to scan and get documents in digital form. Now, while we are in pandemic mode, that might not be something that your institution can do. But once doors reopen, this is certainly something that can be effective so that students don't have to have this type of expenditure. But generally, students will have some sort of smart device or have access to someone with a smart device who can take the pictures and upload them and get them to you. And that's the last one. Get with someone who has something that can assist you. So does the format matter? And the answer is no. Generally, I enforce upon my students 4 formats: TXT, plain text; RTF, real text, which is, upgraded version. It's text 2.0. DOC, Microsoft DOC, because everyone pretty much opens it. And finally, the portable document format, the PDF. I discourage pages. I discourage ODT. I discourage anything else. If I can't open it in Word, I can't open it. If I can't open it in Adobe Acrobat Reader or Adobe Acrobat, I can't grade it. So I strongly encourage you to set boundaries with the formats that they use, and they need to basically, especially in our professional programs, they need to get in the mindset that when they are given an instruction, they have to comply with it, because governmental agencies, when you upload something that says this is the format you're going to use, that is the format that you are going to use, whether you like it or not. So do put your foot down on this and make sure that they are submitting to you so that you can literally access these anywhere from any of your devices at home, at work, to facilitate your grading. And you want them to send artifacts of everything. And we'll talk more about that once we get to the exam wrapper. So you don't need comprehensive stuff, okay? You don't need all 205 pages of their outline or whatever it might be, but you should get 5 or 6 to give you a taste and an idea of what the person is doing. They can take pictures of their highlighted book. They can take pictures of their physical notes. And it should be something substantial to show what the student is doing for their study habits. And that really is the spirit of this assignment. Now, you do need to incentivize this, okay? And by adding a point value to this, which should be something not remarkably substantial, but also not a complete waste of time. It has to be something between maybe a discussion assignment and a formal paper, because you want to encourage them to do this. It is free points, but you also don't want to make it 70% of their grade. So if they do their notes, they pass the class. So make sure you are weighing this accordingly, because it'll be good for you, it's good for them, and it's easy points if they're doing their work. And you'll see why this can be so useful here in a minute. So this assignment is fairly straightforward. Couple of secondary advice things I'm going to give you is make sure you give in this assignment in your learning management system unlimited uploads. Unlimited uploads or limited to 10. But don't make it 1, don't make it 2. Make it some number that they can upload a number of artifacts. If they make a mistake, you don't have to go in and erase something. So, give them enough time to, or give them enough space basically to get the assignment done. 2, try not to use due dates. It might take a little bit longer, a little bit whatever. Be flexible with this one. But you do want to kind of get it into you before the midterm. Your goal here is to kind of look at what's going on and try to get the student on track. And generally, I will have this assignment due the week before the midterm so that by the time midterm review comes around, and kind of see what they're doing. And I've got a good idea based on some other stuff we're going to talk about today, that what we need to talk about, what we need to address. So hope this assignment is useful for you. I found it to be extremely beneficial even in my face-to-face courses, because when a student comes in and they sit down in the chair across from me, when that was, a thing we could do, I could just go into the Dropbox, pull up their artifact, and look at what they were telling me they were doing without them having to drag in 3 binders of notes or whatever. And maybe looking at that and say, hey, do me a favor, bring in just this, so that, we can just look at that. So this can be a very, very useful tool, both for e-learning, remote learning, as well as face-to-face traditional or blended environments. So let's go ahead and close this one down and get to the crux of the matter. So this is an exam wrapper. I call it an assessment reflection sheet. I do something a little bit different here. So what are the key portions of this? We're just going to kind of go section by section. We are going to talk about a couple of things as we get there. How can you adjust this for e-learning? But what are the core? How should you do this? What are some ways you can implement it? Let's get to it. So the first thing is you want to make sure you have a place for the student's name, because you are going to take this from them at the conclusion of their assessment, and you're going to return it to them after you scan it. You're obviously going to want to know what class it is and also maybe what assessment it is. And generally, I'll put the name of the class and then test number 2 or something like that pre-printed on the form for them. So when I hand it out, I already know what class it is, so they can't possibly mess it up. And you'll see why I hand this out prior in just a moment. The first question, do you think the questions on the assessment accurately reflected the topics covered in class, is important? This is asking the student, did I give you the right exam for the right stuff? And you should have unanimous vote yes. The second is, in some way, shape, or form, you want to ask them, how much time did you spend studying? How much time did you invest in your education to succeed in this exam? And you're not here to qualify their number. You're here just to get a number from them. So don't think too much about it. Let them tell you how much, and then you can have a discussion later, I promise. Of that number, how did you study? Reading your notes, filling out an instructor study guide, creating your own, outlining, reading a book, listening to live class recordings. So you are recording your actual live lectures and making them available in either a learning management system, or sharing links or video files to the class in your learning management system. Listening to pre-recorded or vanilla lectures. So these are things you've recorded previously without the class, and it's just a sterile sort of safe for workplace lecture. This generally isn't as good as a live class recording because you don't have the interaction with the students. You're not answering their questions. But the benefit to also pre-recording these as you have time is you can talk forever if you so choose. You can cover everything you want to talk about that needs to be done in lecture. Whereas with these live class recordings, you may run out of time. A study group or partner, Quizlet or online tool, or something else, whatever it might be. Total should equal 100%. So student tells you how much they studied, and then they tell you how they studied. Now, this next section can cause some grief for some places. So the primary discipline I teach in is funeral service. We create funeral directors. And at some schools, you don't let the student see the exam or the timed assessment because you don't want them to steal your work product. And test questions and the effort that's put into test questions can be considerable. And I understand and I respect that. Personally, I can tell you that in the 8 years I've been a professor, looking at the test banks that I've created for just about every course that I teach, I probably have written not less than 38 to 3,900 test questions myself, and I'm extremely protective of them. And when I create new questions, I don't want them ending up on Quizlet. I don't want them ending up on the internet because I need people to learn and not just, answer a question because they read answer was A. So I totally respect and understand if you do not let students review the question. And we'll talk about what else you can put here after I cover the grid. So when a student gets something wrong, if you allow them to review the question or you just want to have them make a best guess, the first thing you want to ask them is, did you understand? Okay, did you understand the material? That's what this first question is asking them. Of the number you got wrong, how much of that, what percentage was from not understanding the concept that was taught in class? The second is a careless mistake. You clicked on the button, you used the mouse wheel, and it shifted the answer up or down, and something happened. The next one is not being able to understand the question. So you understand the material, but you weren't able to figure out what I was asking for or what the issue is. And that's an important question to ask because as more schools are incentivized for getting people graduated and getting them into higher education, and maybe they don't have the reading comprehension they should have, you need to know how that's going to affect how they read the stems of your questions. You should ask how many people just got scared or may have understood concepts but didn't study enough, which led them to fear, which led them to change answers and second guess. And finally, the catch-all. Any other reason, please list below. So what happens if you don't let them do something like this? Well, very simple. Another option that you could put here instead of, did you get right, did you get wrong, is you could put a little chart for the days of the week. So you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you say, please fill in the times that you studied based on the number that you have provided. The reason being is maybe they are studying, but they're studying so late at night that it's completely ineffectual and it's a problem. And it would be more beneficial for them to come home, take a shower, hit the sack, wake up early, even though they might be exhausted, go through the morning ritual so they perk up a little bit and then start studying where they're more likely to retain information. So either way, they're in a precarious situation, but at least their mind might be in slightly better condition to retain. So you might be able to do like a schedule question. But this is part of the fun where you as an educator get to kind of make this tool your own and determine what are the specific things that you want to inquire about for the purposes of this. Next thing you should ask is based on the information that they're seeing. So this is the student. So based on this information, what will the student do differently in preparing for the next examination? And they want to be specific. Change study habits, try something different, whatever it is. So they need to tell you something that they're going to do in order to improve. And if they're doing good, a perfectly acceptable answer is, I'm not going to change much. This seems to be working. That's fine. But if it's not working, obviously you won't have a discussion. What would you like the professor to clarify in class based on your answers? So if you're allowing them to look at stuff, they see something they didn't quite understand based on their wrong answers, then you want to know about that. You want to know if that's a trend or what's going on, so that way you can identify larger issues in the class itself. And then finally, what can your professor do to help you? What is something else that the prof can step in and do an intervention and try to give you a hand? Uh, and an acceptable answer is nothing. It's on me. I get that on my exam wrapper, so that's important. What are you going to do as a student to fix it? What would you like me to clarify from the subject matter, and what else can I do to help? Basically, the three questions you're asking. So you'll notice that as I'm scrolling, we actually have a second page. And that's because what I did on my exam wrapper is I put the scratch paper here. So when a student hands in this sheet for me to scan and to collate their data, what I do is I run this through, and I can also see what type of notes did they make to themselves. If I told them to do something on their scratch paper, do this every time, am I seeing that? Are they putting a dilution equation? Are they putting the accounting equation? Are they drawing their prang color wheel? Are they doing things that I have told them to do on their scratch paper, even if it's not applicable to the stuff that's immediate? So they are in the habit of just writing the stuff down and getting it done to maximize their chances maybe later on comprehensive or board exams. So this is something specific that I do. And then after you've scanned it, you've recorded your data, you give this back to the student, they put it with their notes. So this is what an exam wrapper is. This is very similar to the exam wrapper I received in the AQ Effective Teaching Practices course. I then modified it to my use by adding in certain things that would be specific to me, changing certain language, and then putting the notes page on the back because I found that to be very, very, very important. Again, students should fill this out. This shouldn't be one of those things. If you don't, turn this in, I'm going to give you an F. Some students will just take the scratch paper, ball it up, and chuck it. Fine. Hey, that's on them. But when they want to have a discussion with you, obviously, it's going to be harder. And that literally is on them. So you have physical copies of their notes or digital copies of their notes, and hopefully a variety of what they've been doing. That's important. You have them telling you how they're studying, how long, and what's going on, and what they want you to clarify. And you have the evidence of what they're writing down and, what hopefully their thought processes are. And obviously, any person who spent at least 3 minutes in academia knows that, hey, there's some pretty good stuff here. So the next thing we're going to look at is how this is used. So I took an existing class's grading spreadsheet. So I am somewhat technically savvy. When I figured out Excel, I went deep overboard and I created this master class spreadsheet that I used for all my courses because I wanted to have this thing going on. And this was back in the Angel days before we got Blackboard. And just in case we migrate to some other new learning management system, that I have a tool that I can use no matter what, so that I always have what I need to have, and I don't have to worry about the computer screwing something up or system crashing and we lose whatever stored backups. So what I did is I took my FSE 2100 course, this is Embalming 1, and eliminated the student names, changed around some of the grades in certain areas. I left one column for sure where it should be, because that's the column we're going to kind of look at when we go take a peek at this other stuff. And I went ahead and I'm going to show you how this spreadsheet kind of works and what's the benefit of using it. So I just want to check one thing real quick before we get there, just to make sure that I am not going to get wrecked with a FERPA violation, because I just realized I didn't check everything on this before I brought it in, and everything looks good. So we will bring this back here. I'm going to kind of blow this up to about 150. Let's see if this works. Yeah. So basically, I type everything into these first two columns, and then as they take their exams, I drop their scores here. So this looks like any standard grading spreadsheet. We can see I've had 7 total assessments, a pretend final, a glossary final. I got their attendance scores, some extra quizzes, a paper, and overall grades. Well, you'll see I'll have a tab here called Exam Wrapper. So if I go to this tab and I scroll over, what I have is, once again, for every one of my exams, I have something that approximates this, large grid. And we're going to look at item number 4 here, test number 4. So what happens? I have the student's identifier, first name, last name, whatever it's going to be. I prefer last names instead of student numbers on this page because of the fact that I want to be able to know who it is without looking up their student ID. That's the purpose. I can just look at something and I know who it belongs to. So this first section is the first part of your exam wrapper. The first two questions. Did my exam cover the topics it was supposed to cover? Everyone in the class said yes. And if, as long as everyone says yes, life is good. If someone said no, you need to ask why. You need to ask that student why they felt that your exam did not match the material that they were supposed to study. Maybe they read the wrong chapter. Maybe they did this, but you need to address the no's. And every so often, you'll have one jerk come out and say, no, it didn't, just to see if you're checking that they put no. So this is like, going in and looking at discussions now and then just to go ahead and, prod the sleeping bear and let people know that you look. You're going to want to look at that. Don't take it for granted that it's just a checkbox that says yes or no. The second thing is time. And I can tell you, this looks like a lot, but when a student hands the exam wrapper in and you get this down to a bit of a science, you can literally bang out all of this data in just under 30 seconds, just tabbing over, adding number, getting to the end, and then putting it in the stack. It really is that quick to type in the numbers if you've got like a words per minute over 50. So how much time did they spend? And use the actual number that they give you. So if they omit that field, don't put a number in. If they give you 0, put 0. Your job here is not to qualify whether the number is correct. Your job is simply to type the number. Then we go into the first portion of the grid. So how you studied? Well, I used my notes. I used my instructor study guides, personal study guides. I outlined, I read and highlighted my book, watched live lecture recordings, watched the vanilla pre-recorded lectures. I worked with my study group. I did an online tool and something different. So then what you can do is you can start combining this data, right? So person comes in and they said, hey, I studied 15 hours. And the way I studied 15 hours was by looking at notes, doing the study guide, this, that, this, that, this, that. And you see that this student apparently is working the process. They're doing pretty good. You're going to be very interested to see what their score is. And for their effort, is the reward sufficient? Are they getting a passing grade or a good passing grade? Then you're going to look at some of these other fun ones for the same reason. This person said they had less than an hour to study. Okay, because I said hours, and some people take that very literal, and I didn't have a full hour. They said as they looked at an outline and they watched a pre-recorded live class. Okay, I don't buy that. You'll see why here in a second, because the 1 hour says that as well, right? We see 1 hour. I did 10% of that time doing notes, 6 minutes. I did 12 minutes doing an outline, 12 minutes reading a book. I certainly hope that was a short chapter. I did half of that time watching the live lectures. So, that's just about 30 minutes. And already we have some military grade BS going on because this is a 3 credit hour class, generally separated into a 2-day component, which means each component is an hour and a half. So you spent roughly 30 minutes listening to the recording. You didn't even get through the whole class. You spent 6 minutes looking at your notes. Good for you. You read the book for about 12 minutes. And considering this is Embalming 1, there's probably no chapter in the Embalming History, Theory, and Practice by Robert G. Mayer that can be completely read in 12 minutes that you can say that you've learned anything. So we already see there's going to be some issues, but we don't know because haven't seen the grade yet. This student might be a speed reader. Plenty of reasons, why things could happen. And it's not entirely negative. We have this person here less than an hour, but most of the time I spent was listening to the live class recording. Maybe that student went right to a very specific area and listened to the one thing that they needed to clarify what's going on. So you can't just go in here and go, okay, ding, 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 we got a winner. This person didn't do their job. We have to go and we have to inquire what's going on, but we can make some logical conclusions based on our interactions with students if it's a face-to-face course, but we can't really make those same type of observations in an e-learning or distance environment course. So be cognizant that the numbers mean something, and it's up to you to determine what they actually mean through actually engaging with your student. So from there, we can go to the next section, which is what happened on the exam? How did you get things wrong? So we have, did you understand the concepts. And what we see here is of the people who took this exam, only 2 people had an issue. 50% of the answers they got wrong were because they did not understand the material. And you can infer you've done your job well as a professor. There's no reality where that isn't the case. And some people say, 2 people didn't succeed and there's always room for improvement. And I'm just going to hand them a Twinkie and a Red Bull and say, go play in the corner somewhere. 90% got it. I am happy with the number that I see that I have done my job and done my job well. Can't save everyone, but if I can save 90%, I've done a pretty good job, man. So let's go with the next one. Carelessness. You screwed up and you got wrecked. What happened here? Well, half the answers that I got wrong because I was careless. At least one, look at all the people. Half the stuff I got wrong because I was careless. That means I knew it. Okay, that means I knew it, but I was going too quick. Slow down. Don't drink that 3rd Red Bull before you take my exam. Take a breath. Calm down. Write something on your note sheet, whatever you can do to slow yourself down. Next one. Did you understand my questions? Obviously, a very important question. And if we look, we only have 2 people. One person said, hey, one question maybe, this was an issue. Half the questions I got wrong, this was an issue. So out of 21 people, considering that at least 2 people didn't take the exam, we're doing pretty good here. Again, 90% of the class is basically saying that I understand your questions. Perfect. Life is good. Second guessing. Now we have the dumpster fire. Look at that. Everyone is second guessing. Every question I got wrong because I got scared. Every question I got wrong, I got scared. Every question I got wrong, I got scared. And then finally, other, whatever other might be. I don't bother tracking other on the spreadsheet. I will look at other and then, as necessary, address other. So what can we do with this? Well, let's start with this. This person, every question they got wrong was because they were careless or they got scared. Every question they got wrong. Let that sink in. Every question they got wrong because they got careless and they got scared. Every question they got wrong, they got careless, they got scared. Every question they got wrong, they got scared, they got careless. Same thing. Wow. You know what's happening here. Slow down, take a breath. Maybe something with studying will help you with your fear factor. Maybe it's test anxiety. You don't know. But look how many people are getting wrecked because they're careless and they're second guessing. So now, because we put the test scores in and it populates the test scores over here, we can look at the fun part. Generally, the smartest people lose points to being careless and second guessing. Generally, the smartest people lose points to being careless and second guessing. Generally, the smartest people lose points to being careless and second guessing. 16 points lost, 19 points lost, 11 points lost, 15 points lost, 20 points lost. Because you're being careless, you're slowing down. You need to slow down. And you're second guessing yourself because maybe you don't know it as well as you do, or maybe you're just getting scared because you're going too quick and you got, whatever it is. But you can have a discussion. Now, 80% in my classes is a C. Professional standard is 75%. This is usually, the C plus, B minus range, or a solid B. So in general, these are good students. These are good students getting good grades. And just an absolute of like 90 to 100, 80 to whatever. These are B students. These are good students. The fact that they're in a professional program that's harder, it's unfortunate, but these are good grades. But they're losing points to silly, stupid stuff. But look at our person who put some time into their stuff and said, hey man, these are reasons why. 78. Half of the reasons why I got stuff wrong because I didn't understand the material. I was careless for some. That would put me into a passing grade. Didn't understand the question. That would have put me into a passing grade. Then I second guessed myself. That definitely would have put me in a passing grade. So even if I didn't understand something, if I wasn't careless and I didn't change my answer, I probably would have got an 82 to 84. And then what you can do, because this is test number 4, this is the class average going forward. Well, we can look at some of these people. Got scared, second guessed, got an 85. Yeah, they're an A student. Okay. They're an A student. We go back, we look, we can see they studied 8 hours. They studied kind of across the board. Uh, you know, eh, meh. Can't really take a lot away from that. They're a good student, and they just got basically hit by the Professor Finn bus on this exam. And we might have to say, what was this exam about? We'll get there in a second. How about this one? Didn't understand the question. Second guessed myself. I got a 65. I got wrecked. But normally, without that 65, probably would have been in the 80s somewhere. So good student, really bad exam. Oof. Was careless. Second guessed myself. 89. This was a good exam for me nonetheless. Look at all the information that you have just by looking at this. Look at all the information you have just by looking at this. And then you can always go back, and when a person says, hey, I only studied an hour, and how did that end for me? You studied an hour, you got wrecked by my exam, and your scores are going down. You cannot study for an hour. So even if you try to mix it up, you're doing good here, okay? You're doing real good with what you should be doing. This number is bad. You have to fix that. Look how quickly you can make that decision and offer some guidance, right? So this is the value of an exam wrapper. And you can then take this and you can then push this into class development and improvement. You can push this into program development and improvement. You can use this for annual effectiveness reports. You can use this for self-studies. When someone says, hey, how do you know, what's wrong with students? What's going on? How do you assess? Well, this is how we assess them. And then you can track this in the long term. So because I am who I am, we're looking at the FSE 2100 course in the Omama semester. So we're at the next class now. I'm handed all the students their stuff because remember, this was their scrap paper. I'm handing it back. They got their scratch paper from the exam. I've already checked to make sure they're not copying down my questions or anything like that. I've run all their numbers for them. They get their stuff back. So this is what they see on the whiteboard, using the projector, whatever it's going to be. The first thing is how many people said my exam was wrong. No one did. You all agree that the exam is okay. Cool. That means anything that's bad is on you. On average, people studied 8 hours, and the class average was an 85. That means it's not a bad exam. Highs, lows, this is not a bad exam. And if you study about 8 hours, chances are pretty good you're going to get a good grade. This is the numbers. And students will perceive them to be like, oh yeah, hey, I got to kick it up. So then let's see what worked for people. Notes. Half the class did notes. Yep, I'll say so. Remember, we might have looking back at the grades, you might have 2 students that drop because we have 2 empty slots here. 3, technically. But I see there's no score, which means the student didn't take the exam ever since this is a final grade rush. So by now, they're probably gone. They might have dropped. Whatever it was, they may have, I already know that we are down to 19 at this point. So half the class is doing notes. Half the class is doing notes. That's a good sign. Half the class, a little bit more than half the class, is doing study guides. Meh. People doing, their own personal study guides. Meh. People doing outlining. Half the class, a little bit more than half the class is reading the book. That's an issue. We should have that number much closer to the 19 of the people that we know are still in the class at this point. So 6 people don't have time to read the book or don't find reading the book effective. Just about half the class are listening to the live lecture recordings. That's pretty good, right? So they're going back and they're listening and they're clarifying and they're doing stuff like that. That would be important. Damn near nobody's listening to the pre-recorded lectures on this one. No one went back and looked at it. So, that might be an issue. Might just be a bad chapter. We don't know. 3 people did a study group. People saying, hey, what's some way that I can do to improve? Well, the first thing you can bring up is try doing a study group, man. Online tool, about half the class are using Quizlet or StudyStack or something like that. They're doing something online. Cool. You know that. And then one person did something else. They did the hokey pokey because that's what it's all about. So this is what's working for people. This is what's not working for people. Now, these numbers may not mean that every person that listen to pre-recorded lectures also did not listen to live class lectures. They could be doing both. It just shows this is what people are doing by the frequency they're doing it. So we see the big winners here really are notes, study guides, reading book. In close seconds, we're getting listening to online lectures and using Quizlet. Everything else is, in the low teen single digits. So where did people mess up? Well, you folks telling me 2 out of 19 people that you understand the material. You understand the material. We're good there. 17 out of 20, almost half of you lost points for being careless. That is stupid. You're losing points because you're rushing. Slow down, take a breath. 2 out of 19 said I didn't understand the question. Again, it's not questions, it's you. We've got to talk about you and what are some things that you need to do. Maybe it's time for you to go visit the reading labs or the writing labs and work on the vocabulary and reading comprehension. You need to do something if you want to get better at that. Whatever it might be, do a word a day. I don't know, but we have to have a talk about it. That's the important part. This is why we do this. We have to have a talk about it. And you absolutely got wrecked by second guessing. More than half the class lost points on the exam because you got scared or you didn't know it well enough, which caused you to get scared and you changed your answer. More than half the class, 19 people in the course, 13 people got wrecked by second guessing. And we saw that some people lost as much as 20 points solely to second guessing. That's horrible. So now we know that we need to take some strategies into the classroom to prevent second guessing, talk about second guessing, and tell them to stop doing it, among other things. And the other, maybe I talk about the other, maybe I don't. Depends on what the other were, and what they wrote might actually have fallen into one of these other places because they didn't understand, what the question meant. So let's look and see what students said about this. They said, well, I should continually study. Yeah, you should. So this would be a talking point in class, like, you should continually study. Yeah, because studying is practicing learning. And if you're practicing piano, you're practicing a sport, you want to get better at piano, you want to get better at the sport, you have to spend time on it, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, whatever it takes, but you got to touch it every day. You got to do that with the studying. You absolutely have to do that with the studying. If you study 10 minutes a day and you get to the end of the week, you studied more than an hour, you study 20 minutes a day, you're almost to 2 hours. This is how this works. So you have to touch it every day. Not fully focused like I need to be. Might be a lot of stuff going on. Why is that? Have to identify why that is. Other people might not be fully focused either. Got to have that same conversation. They need to hear it. Students need to see that other students are going through the same exact things that they are. So, boom, not fully focused. Got to identify why that is. What can we do to get you out of that system? What can we do to get you in a better place so that you are not stuck being unfocused? Have to have a conversation. You engage the student. Not lose track of time, not procrastinate. Boom. Okay, so how do you stop procrastinating? What are some ways that you stop procrastinating? Do you use your Gmail account to go ahead and send you reminders? Hey, make sure you do this. Get some discipline in that fashion by using the tools that you already have. Engage with the student. Allows you to have a conversation. I thought I studied the right material, but I missed important concepts. Oh, you studied the right material, but you missed something inside. That's important. How did you miss that? And then you're going to go back and you're going to look, who was that person? If that was the person that did the 1 hour and got, relatively wrecked, want to have a conversation about it. If that was the person who studied 8 hours and got an 85 and they normally get a 95, well, that's a different type of conversation. But you can have those conversations. That's what's important. So make sure that you are using this as intended. This is a tool to engage your students and find out why it is they are or are not working. So if we look at the class average, we see it for the most part, students are doing well. No one is really getting absolutely phenomenally destroyed. I mean, we got these 75s here, which means you're getting a D in the course. You got this person right there about to fall off the cliff. But overall, everyone's a B or better. You get some people getting close to the cliff with these 81s and 82s and all that. But for the most part, this is looking good. So this is test 4. What does the individuals want us, the instructor, to clarify? So this is what you talk about before you go into the new chapter, because you want to make sure they get this right. in preparation for a midterm, in preparation for a comprehensive final, whatever it's going to be. And so they say, hey, clarify instruments used for embalming, go over instruments more. Ooh, that's important. So this tells me what? Looking at this years later, and I've taught embalming at my institution since I was hired. This tells me test number 4 is chapter number 4 in Mayer's textbook. That's the chapter on making a prep room, because the instruments and the embalming machines, the types of embalming machines, are at the end of that chapter. And anyone who uses that book knows that that is the dumpster fire of that book of boring stuff. Wall construction materials, angles of pipes as they progress. This is a horribly boring chapter. My class average is an 85. Some of the worst material this book has to present, my students are getting an 85. That's a damn good score by my evaluation. So now I get this thing right here. Clarify instruments used for embalming. Well, that's like the last 5 pages of the book, or of that one chapter. It's just it sneezes all the instruments out at once, doesn't really have some great pictures, has some illustrations. So how can this be used? So at my institution, during this semester, I believe they hired a new department chair. And at that point, the person they think they brought on, his name was Dr. Mark Mead, comes from Alabama, and he's worked throughout the southern and southeastern United States in various capacities. And Dr. Mead is a rock star. He's my boss. He's a rock star. I'm going to say that publicly. A shout out to him, not just because my performance evaluation is coming up in the fall, hint, hint, but because my performance evaluation is coming up in the fall, but because he has been one of the more effective administrators I've worked for. I've worked under a number of excellent people. They've all had their strengths. They've all had their weakness, like any leader, any supervisor is going to have. But he did something fairly remarkable. One year, because this is something that always happens. Can you clarify instruments? We have embalming labs. Students work with the instruments. We explain the instruments in the lab, but it clearly doesn't sink in. And obviously, we can't spend every lecture going over instruments because there's a lot of stuff to get through in that textbook, and it's a very, very important subject. So you have to get creative with this. And what I would have loved to have had was excess instruments, because if they're in the prep room and being used, they're contaminated. And you don't want to be handing those things out in a class for people to play with. So one day gives me a call and says, hey, it's end of the year. We're closing all the books, and we have some monies we have to spend before we lose it. What can I get you? Anything that you need for your labs, your classes, what is it? Put together a wish list, and let's get her done. And time is of the essence. If you need something, you need to let me know. And because I know that this has historically been an issue, because I have these exam wrappers and I'm tracking them, I can say, well, can I get some lab instruments, specifically stuff to make demo groups out of? We're not going to really use them in the lab, but we're going to use them in the lecture, because I know that can be an issue with funding that is specific for labs versus funding that is specific for lecture classes. And he just goes, give me the stuff, give me a number, and let's get her done. So I give him, I call my supply companies, I get the numbers, and it got done. Because I'm handing out this form and students are asking me to clarify instruments, I can spend $2,000 or $3,000 on instruments for use in this class so that students can have some way to get better with instruments. And I know that because that's what they told me. And the way I know that is because I did this form, instead of just guessing what can I use. And if you have to guess, well, let me ask my faculty and let's see what's going on, and maybe they can give me some ideas. Someone else who is doing this is going to step up and say, hey, I really need this, and I know they need it because they're doing something like this. So when you have an opportunity to get ahead of the line and get something, this goes a long way. And to this day, I have these wonderful little kits that I built that are separated from our lab instruments that I am able to now demonstrate in the classroom and pass stuff around. And the only thing I have to do to decontaminate it is, run a Lysol wipe over it, and it's done. It's brilliant. If I want to take these out for outreach events, I can take these things out for outreach events, because we have these nice, bright, shiny tools that have never been contaminated. And then instructor help, ease your way to remember arterial tubes and instruments. So the class is seeing this. Someone is asking this. And that person knows who it is. And you know who it is because you are the instructor. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to go with that information, maybe instructor help, and say, who was this person? So, sake of argument, what if it was this individual? I need help with the instruments, with the arterial tubes and whatnot. Class average 82. This was a relatively bad score for that individual, 89%. Second guessed themselves on a bunch of questions, could have been the arterial tube things. They do a healthy mix of studying and they study 30 hours. So you can have a particular type of conversation with that person. But what if it's this person with 1? What if it's this person with 0? You drag the 1 back over and they got a 65 and their numbers are going down. Well, I would love to give you an easier way to try to, work with this stuff, but you just don't have the time to do it. No matter what I do to try to make this easier, you are not putting in enough time to study. The rule of thumb, for every 1 hour of credit for a college level online course, you should be studying 3 hours. So 9 hours per class, basically. And you're not even close to doing that. And you're trying to find ways to streamline it. You can't. There's no way you're going to be able to streamline that. And you have to recognize that you have to up this number to get anything meaningful done. So this all comes from a single sheet of paper you hand them after an assessment. We'll say, well, what if we get rid of all of this? Well, you can spend more time looking at what they're doing studying, how much time they spend, and what their grades are, and you can still make inferences. You're going to spend more time looking at this stuff and expect some more quality feedback. You'll be able to figure out what's going on. You can see that, I have a class average of 85 right now, but the test average for this this particular test was an 80. So I probably have something wrong with the spreadsheet. That should be reading 80 and not what the class average is. If we go up here, we can see that the class average is slowly going down because the material gets harder and more boring. And you can easily track what's happening. It says, can the instructor, so up here with, this is the first exam. The first exam, some of these are probably first-time students. Everyone's here studying 10 hours. Class average is an 89. You can look to see, did anyone get completely wrecked? We got a 70. In my eyes, chapter 1 in the Mayor book, you got wrecked. You got wrecked bad. Target more on key points for the exam. You can address this right off the bat. You're not going to get that. This is a professional school. I can't tell you what's going to be on the exam. If you want to do stuff like that, go get a degree in one of the other disciplines, but you're not going to get something like that here. I can't tell you what's going to be on the exam. And I specifically can't do it because every exam that I give in embalming is randomized. I don't know what it's going to ask you, and I'm not going to cover every question in the bank. So know it. Comprehension of human separation. So that has to do with, a person cannot fully realize a person is passed just by simply willing it into existence. Seeing the body, touching the body allows people to really concretely have a separation. That sort of stuff. Give a general review. I mean, you can. Time permitting, you can do something like that. But the problem with the general review is it's eventually going to be, can you just target on the stuff that's going to be on the exam, which means the general review becomes useless for you. So you can see that as you go through, and it looks like with this one, I just flat up forgot to either print it or collect it or collate it. Something happened. Here we have our time-weighted averages and all sorts of stuff. Hint, hint, hint. There's a video for that on my channel. So I'm not going to kick the dead horse any further. I think you folks have seen that this can be an extremely effective tool, not just for face-to-face, but also for your blended learning. And maybe you only collect these exam wrappers at midterm. Maybe you only collect them every other week. Maybe you just have the students do it and store it with your notes. But I would encourage you not to do that, because if you never ask for it, they're never going to do it. So really strongly suggest, if you're going to do something like this, maybe you incentivize it, make it like, 3% of the total grade. You upload it into a Dropbox automatically once you filled it out, and then you have it so that at midterm you can kind of go over if a student is struggling, and away you go. One of the modalities that I'm shifting to with this sort of a thing, specifically for a virtual learning environment, is every week a student does this. And again, I'm testing this out. It's going to be the first time I'm doing this. Yeah, every week they do an exam wrapper, and then at midterm, part of the exam wrapper will have shifted so that if there is something you wanted me to clarify, you have to go into the book, find out where it is, explain to me what you think it means. And then at midterm, you upload all these things into the Dropbox. I pull all this data. I get all these students clarify. Here's where it is. Here's what I think it means. And then for midterm review session, I have what you're telling me to ask and know exactly where to go in the book to get it, no matter what subject it is. And I can create an effective midterm review because I can't just talk about the questions. We can't do that in the funeral service discipline. That is not something we need to be doing in our professional programs. So they're telling me what the issue is. I'm getting insight into what it is they don't and how they don't understand it. And then I can present it right before they go into the major midterm and kind of correct things. Could I do it more frequently? I probably could. But again, this is something that I'm going to kind of dip my toes into the water to see, do I need to do it more often, less often, that sort of thing, and go from there. First time trying it. So, folks, I hope you found this helpful. Like, share, subscribe, drop something in the comments. If there's a topic you want me to discuss, if there's something you want me to clarify more, by all means, please, please, please send me stuff. Encourage other people to come in here and, check this out. This is a community effort that I do for the community. So anything that I can do to help you folks out, by all means, let me know. It's Professor Finn signing off. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next video.
All my memories gather round her, miner's lady, stranger to blue water, dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty taste of moonshine, teardrop in my eye, country roads, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country road.